Unfortunately, we knew that this was an idea that the government was, well, trying to trying to do. And my hope was at least, at least, there would be someone in the government somewhere who would go, "What is Patel on about? This is an absolutely dumb idea. Why are we doing this?" Of course, what we're talking about is offshore detention centres, namely in Rwanda. So people are going to spend all their time desperately trying to escape from who knows where, maybe even Rwanda themselves. Because, Rwanda's a dictatorship and actually hasn't got a very good human rights track record. So fully expect me in who knows how long it will be before we get news that these detention centres are absolutely human rights abuses hotspot centres. And that is almost a guarantee, by the way, because any other country that does this, not only, first of all, is it a massive, and I mean massive waste of money doing this, it's far more cheaper to get these asylum seekers put through the system and then they can join British society and be productive members of it because, again, they pay taxes, they take out less than a normal British native. So, you know, things that we could be doing and helping them get along, it's far cheaper than having to pack them on a plane, send them to Rwanda, and then hope for the best, which is really what Patel is doing. And Patel is really, really hoping that these migrants are going to be out of sight, out of mind. But needless to say, this is a really, really, really dumb idea. So, as always, before we do get into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and one update link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this. This comes from the London Economic, with the title of Patel Arrives in Rwanda to Unveil the Government's New Offshore Processing Centre. The government will announce a multi-million pound plans for asylum seekers who cross the channel in those small boats to then be flown for processing to Rwanda. Home Secretary Priti Patel is expected to sign a deal with the East African nation during a visit on Thursday, with people seeking sanctuary in the UK to be sent more than 4,000 miles. Some of those who make the perilous journey trying to cross the channel, as well as by any other means being deemed illegal by the government, would be sent to Rwanda, where their claims are assessed offshore. An initial £120 million is expected to be given to the Rwandan government under a trial scheme, which is being criticised by the refugee charities as cruel and a nasty decision. Well, as we've said before, the cruelty is the point. The idea is that somehow, if we treat these these refugees as like cruelly and as nastily as possible, they'll stop coming here. That's unfortunately the point. And it's really shameful that, again, it's going to be far, far cheaper to get them just put through the system than it will be to send them to Rwanda and give money to a dictatorship, a military dictatorship, which has an awful human rights record. Doesn't sound very a good, should we say, government to be giving money to. And of course, this obviously will fail to address the issue and, of course, lead to more human suffering and chaos, which, again, is the point, that this will just completely fail to address the issue. Asylum seekers who remain in the UK while their claims are considered could be housed in very stricter reception centres under the plans. The first will reportedly be an open village in Linton-on-Ouse in North Yorkshire. The new scheme has very quickly drew derision from the opposition, as well as the refugee advocates, including the Bishop of Durham, Paul Butler, who told the BBC it would just not work. I am really worried that this is not the right way to treat asylum seekers. We have an international duty under the Refugee Convention to look after asylum seekers well. They are big issues and they've got to be tackled. And I don't think this is the way to do it, he said. And this is really it. This is just the government trying desperately to abdicate any responsibility for any asylum seekers. Just send them off to Rwanda and, out of sight, out of mind. But that's not going to fix the issue. If Patel seriously wanted to help with this issue, she'd be putting more money into the system to help people be processed quicker and to help them get set up. But of course, obviously, we can't have that because, well, a lot of, shall we say, well, not a lot, but there is a certain section of the conservative voting public who are, well, quite racist. There's no other way to say it than that. He said, I remain to be convinced that this is going to be a deterrent in any way. And of course, Labour is accusing Boris Johnson of trying to distract from being fined for the breaching of coronavirus laws with an unworkable, unethical, and exorbitant plans. Human rights campaigners also described the government plan as barbaric, cowardly, and shockingly ill-conceived. I wonder if these campaigners have ever seen anything the government has done before, but I'm not surprised. Steve Val-Salmons, Amnesty International's UK Refugee and Migrants' Rights Director, said that an African nation has a dismal human rights record. In a statement to the PA News Agency, Mr. Val-Salmons said that sending people to another country, let alone anyone with such a dismal human rights record from asylum processing, is the very height of irresponsibility and shows just how far removed from humanity and reality the government really is now on asylum issues. The government is already trying to wreck our asylum system here at huge cost to the taxpayer, while causing terrible anxiety to the people stuck in the backlogs it has created. But this shockingly ill-conceived idea will go far further in inflicting suffering and waste huge amounts of public money. Another refugee advocate group issued a withering statement of the scheme, calling it a grubby cash for people plan, and that it was cowardly and barbaric. The chief executive of Refugee Action, Tim Nolan-Houghton, accused the government of offshoring its responsibilities onto Europe's former colonies instead of trying to do our fair share and help some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. He added that the UK should have learnt from Australia's horrific experiment in sending refugees thousands of miles away to camps where they experienced rampant abuse as well as rape, murder, and suicide. And this is going to be in the news headlines not too long ago because that's what Australia did. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I think they put a stop to it because, again, it was wasting money, and all these really bad headlines were making people think again, of course, about doing this type of thing. Anyway, going on to say this. This grubby cash for people plan would be cowardly, barbaric, and inhumane way to treat people fleeing persecution and war, said Mr. Houghton. Ministers who seem to keenly ignore the reality that most people who cross the channel in flimsy boats are refugees from other countries where persecution and war are rife, who just want to live in safety. And of course, the detention action said that the men sent to Rwanda would likely face indefinite detention under a government notorious for the violent persecution of the dissident. An advocacy group said, at the same time the UK currently gives asylum to Rwandan refugees fleeing political persecution, again, something we should probably bear in mind, maybe sending someone who falls under this jurisdiction who is a Rwandan refugee, probably not a good idea to send them back to Rwanda so that they can claim asylum in this offshore processing centre. Not very good. The Prime Minister, again, is set to argue a speech on Thursday that action is needed to combat the, quote, vile people smugglers turning the ocean into a watery graveyard. Well, if you set up legitimate routes, Boris, it wouldn't have to be that way. Patel then is also expected to set out further details for a migration and economic development partnership with Rwanda. Again, why on earth are we doing that with Rwanda? They are a dictatorship, a very brutal dictatorship at that. Why are we doing this? Again, during a visit to the capital of Kigali. It is thought that asylum seekers will be encouraged to relocate and rebuild their lives in Rwanda rather than the UK. With more information on how the agreement will work is anticipated in the coming days. Again, doesn't seem this idea is just so crazy. But what do you expect from this government? What do you expect? Mr. Johnson will say that the number of people making the perilous crossings of the channel could reach at least 1,000 a day within weeks, with around 600 arrived on Wednesday. I expect these people, whether around 600 or 1,000, are in search of a better life, the opportunities that the United Kingdom provides, and the hope for a fresh start, he's expected to say. But it is these hopes, these dreams that have been exploited. Then why not help them if they've been exploited? Again, the thinking on this is just not a good plan, and I would hope that any future government would just end this plan as quickly as it started. Where were we? Weeks, 6 on Wednesday. I accept that these people, whether 6 or not, are in search of a better life, opportunities that the United Kingdom provides, and in hope of at least a fresh start, he's expected to say. But these hopes, these dreams have been exploited. These vile people smugglers are abusing the vulnerable and turning the channel into a watery graveyard, with men, women, children drowning in unworthy boats and suffocating in refrigerated lorries. Then set up safe routes. If that is your problem, why are we not setting up routes for these asylum seekers and refugees doing this? I really despair. Anyway, the long-term plan. Mr. Johnson will argue that the, quote, long-term plan for asylum in this country will be, quote, world-leading. Will it? When, again, you've only got to look up Australia when they tried this. Didn't turn out very well. And will settle, quote, thousands of people every year through safe routes. It's not a safe route if they've got to the UK, want to apply for asylum, and then are put on a plane to Rwanda. That's not exactly a safe route. Not only that, what do you do with people who are fleeing Rwanda from, persecution? While not anticipated to be an easy task or without challenges, officials and ministers are said to believe that the plan will allow the UK to better support those fleeing oppression, persecution, and tyranny through safe and legal routes while also controlling the border. Again, dumb idea, guys. Absolutely dumb idea. This ain't going to work. The British Red Cross executive Zoe Abrams said that the humanitarian network was profoundly concerned about the plans to send traumatized people halfway around the world to Rwanda. The financial and human cost will be considerable. Evidence from where offshoring has been implemented elsewhere shows that it leads to profound human suffering, plus a bill at the taxpayer's expense will be asked to foot is likely to be huge, she asked. Emma Solomon, the chief executive of the Refugee Council, urged the government to immediately rethink its plans. We are appalled by the government's cruel and nasty decision to send those seeking sanctuary in our country to Rwanda, he said. Offshoring the UK's asylum system will do absolutely nothing to address the reasons why people take the perilous journey to find safety in the UK. It will do little to deter them from coming to this country, but will only lead to more human suffering and chaos, and at huge expense of at least an estimated £1.4 billion a year. The Home Office, of course, has questioned the figure, with the source saying that it was, quote, ludicrous to suggest the cost would be more than the current system. It's going to be more than the current system. It's going to be far, far more than the cost of the current system, because one of the things the Conservatives have done, why the system is so bad at the moment, is because it is drastically underfunded. The Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said that the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing is just unworkable, unethical, and extortionate. The planned deal, expected deal with Rwanda, comes after another touted locations, including the Ascension Islands, the Arabia, and Gibraltar, were all rejected, at times very angrily by the nations suggested. Peers, again, will mount a fresh resistance to the measure and have already inflicted an increasing series of defeats to the government's nationality and borders bill. Legislation is again currently between the between the Commons and the Lords, after peers defeated the ministers again, about the second time I think it was now, including the demand that offshore asylum claims should be subject to approval by both houses of Parliament. Again, this is such a dumb plan. This is such a dumb idea. Why on earth are they doing it? But oh yeah, of course, the cruelty is the point. And it's all some ridiculous attempt to make sure that Nigel Farage can't park on the Conservatives' lawn and just start pushing for the same thing, whatever reason, and essentially steal away their votes at general elections. That's it. That's the reason why it's being done ultimately. It's, again, to echo the comments from there, it's barbaric, it's nonsensical, it's inhumane, and we've seen other countries that have done this before. It doesn't turn out well. These camps turn into humanitarian hellholes. So fully expect us on this channel in who knows how long a time that this gets through or approved, which I hope not. I hope certainly not it doesn't get approved. But even if it does get approved, we'll be spending vast amounts of essentially public money to send people to humanitarian hellholes. And I don't think the public are going to be very happy with that. But of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and an donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and see you all next time.